As our tale begins, a little girl falls through a hole in the ground while chasing a white rabbit carrying a pocket watch. Now, despite the similarities, Katie in Meow Meow Land is actually not a video game adaptation of Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. But if you're going to borrow from existing media, you could certainly do worse than that genuinely classic piece of literature. It is said that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and to some extent I do agree with that notion. Even though Meow Meow Land is not an exact replica of Wonderland, the similarities are quite striking. I get that I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but I just can't stress this fact enough. A nonsensical world complete with not just characters but also items plucked right out of the source material, and it all just feels so well put together. Until you get past the tutorial, that is. Hope you enjoyed how easy that was, because if you're anything like me, it's only going to get trickier from here on out. Maybe you'll be enjoying the surreal environments and zany characters too much to even be bothered by this. That wouldn't exactly surprise me, as I too was enchanted by the experience as a whole, at first. Now, unlike most other adventure games, Katie in Meow Meow Land does not put you in direct control of its protagonist. Instead, she's only able to move as part of a puzzle or to reach the next obstacle. Otherwise, clicking on her simply elicits an audio cue and a short animation. The only way to make her move when needed is by clicking on her, almost as if you're interacting with an object rather than embodying the protagonist. This generated a slight disconnect during my time spent trying to get the poor girl back home. Something I'm not entirely convinced she had her mind set on from the get-go either, seemingly more interested in what these strange lands might hold. Strange lands filled with cats. Cool cats. Actual cats, but they're also just really cool, unlike the puzzles. But we'll get to those. For now, how about the fact that Katie is rarely even the tiniest bit unsettled despite the absurdity of everything that's happening? One example of this is when two characters are throwing various objects at each other and she's ducking to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Then once it ends, she is back to her usual happy self, as if this was just another day on the playground. Not thereby saying that she is only ever expressive when cowering in fear, mind you. Bodily language showcasing anger, curiosity, and jump for joy excitement do also crop up from time to time. I just don't understand why she doesn't frequently panic, given all that's happening. Perhaps this is that thing, the childlike innocence and wonder that grown-ups do not possess? Or is Katie actually aware of the fact that some invisible hand is both guiding and keeping her safe? That might actually help make a lot of sense of certain scenarios. But Meow Meow Land was not put together with the typical mindset of someone from our world, and I dare say it's better for it. If only I could say the same about clicking on and trying everything with everything when stumped. In other words, relying on trial and error to come up with a solution. Even so, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't amused by how many objects have brief and pointless, yet amusing interaction animations. In that sense, I would say Katie in Meow Meow Land almost feels inspired by Monty Python's Flying Circus, as well as the Goblins games. But no amount of goofy responses from poking a tree or using items in ways one clearly shouldn't is going to change the fact that puzzles are this game's biggest weakness, even if they aren't all equally bad. On paper, the complete lack of text anywhere across the entire game is a great thing. In practice, much like the puzzles, this too is a mixed bag. It is still truly refreshing to experience a story without words, however. One in which everything is conveyed through interactions, gestures, animations, and all that good stuff. Unfortunately, this has the downside of making more than a few puzzles an absolute chore to figure out. Item descriptions might have gone a long way, although at least there were moments when characters would straight up tell Katie what they wanted. If only it happened more than half a dozen or so times during the 24 levels. Which brings me to, well, no one likes pixel hunting. If only Meow Meow Land had gotten that memo, as it does contain a lot of pixels. Wait, that's not. Meow Meow Land has a lot of interactable hotspots, yet very few actually do anything. The cursor does change to a paw when hovering over something you can interact with. That part is good at least. It's the other stuff I'm not overly fond of. How the game never tells where the object you're currently holding can be used, for example. An issue further aggravated by puzzles with a time limit of sorts, and the fact that the item teleports back to its original location if you click on something without function. Despite those frustrations, I would still absolutely recommend KD Meow Meow Land. The visual charm and cuteness do a lot to make my issues seem smaller than they are, and that was also what kept me going. Even when I found myself troubled by a button-pushing obstacle in a cave for nearly 10 minutes. If you enjoy experiencing dreamlike worlds filled with wonder and surreal adventures, there's a lot to like here. Just maybe not the puzzles. Thank you very much for watching.